Hi, this is Editor's Take. I'm Sakshi Batra and I have with me Gaurav Choudhary. He's the Deputy Executive Editor of Moneycontrol, and we are going to be talking about Congress manifesto, which actually promises to overhaul the current GST structure. Thanks a lot, Gaurav, for joining in. Now, you've written an opinion piece on this on moneycontrol.com, and what I want to first of all understand is what has really Congress said in its manifesto about the current GST system, and how does it really propose to overhaul it?
So it has promised to overhaul GST in the sense that they have promised to bring in a single standard rate. Which is okay. You bring in a single standard rate. It hasn't said that it will do away with multiple rates. But the problem here is that it has promised to bring in revenue neutral rates, which means that both the center and the state is not going to lose revenue regardless of the redesign of GST, which is so far so good. But but they have said that they're going to bring petroleum products, essentially petrol and diesel, under the ambit of GST within 2 years and still maintain a revenue neutral rate. If that is to happen, I don't think a revenue neutral rate for petrol and diesel, GST rate for petrol and diesel, actually is going to lead to lower prices, because it at best is going to only tidy up the system. I don't think there is anything in it for consumers if you maintain a revenue neutral rate for GST.
Right. So we are talking about this revenue neutral rate, and this has been in talks, and a lot of debate has taken place whether the petroleum products can actually come or should actually come under the GST ambit. So first of all, what could be the revenue neutral rate that Congress could be looking at giving, and whether that will really help benefit the consumers as well as bring down the fuel prices?
So if you look at the current incidence of taxes, petrol and diesel, as we know, are highly taxed products. There are state taxes, state VAT, and there is a central excise duty and various other kinds of levies. There is a dealer commission, etc. etc. So current incidence of tax is about 45%, between 40 to 45% across states, and there are different rates of VAT in different states. Maharashtra, for instance, has a VAT rate of 40% and 25% for petrol and diesel respectively, and likewise for many other states. Now, if the government were to maintain, or if the GST Council were to agree on maintaining a revenue neutral rate for petrol and diesel, then that GST rate for petrol and diesel would be in the range of 40 to 45%, which is far higher. So there cannot be any difference. If there were to be a difference, if it had to be, if the GST rate were to be decided or fixed at 28%, which is the peak rate for GST, that would mean existing tax incidence will have to be brought down by 17%. I don't think that is going to happen, and states are not going to agree to that.
Absolutely, and that was my question, because states so far have been asking about the compensation on the taxes that they were going to lose, and if something like this happens, the states are going to be the first to outcry about the 28% GST. So unlikely that this will happen, but so far the Congress has also maintained that there should be probably just one standard rate. So what have they said about that, in case they also agree to have a 28% on GST, or maybe a 45%, that is still not going to be comfortable for other goods and services to have?
So having one single standard rate is one thing, and the other thing is obviously on what is the rate of GST that you are going to decide on for petrol and diesel. Please remember, the petrol and diesel remain highly taxed commodities because of a painful legacy of India's energy economics. Both the center and the states have used these two products, these two transport fuels, as milch cows. Say for instance, in 17-18, the center earned 2.29 lakh crore rupees, 2.29 lakh crore from excise duty on petrol and diesel, which was about 11% of the total tax collections of the government. Likewise, if you take states, for instance, also a so-called industrialized state like Maharashtra, for instance, earned about 15% of its total state taxes from petrol and diesel, VAT on petrol and diesel. Karnataka about 13% in 17-18, and there is a similar pattern across most states. To what extent states are will be willing to forego this revenue and settle for a lower tax incidence, and still say that petrol and diesel should be brought under GST remains a huge challenge. Even if states agree to bring petrol and diesel under GST, I don't think any state is going to agree to lower revenues just for the sake of bringing petrol and diesel under GST.
But talking about the current structure of the GST, do you think that it really needs a change or an overhaul? Is it not correct in the current form that it is?
No, there are definitely design flaws in the existing GST, and the council and the central government and various state governments who are part of the council have been trying to fix this since the time it kicked in from July 1, 2007. And say for instance, we have seen multiple rate changes. the peak rate of 28% now attracts only about 20 to 30 goods and services attract about goods attract about 28% tax that have been progressively brought down.
Yeah.
But there are multiple rates, and that is a problem. As the government has said, as Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has also said, as we go along progressively, probably all the rates will, the mean rate will probably center around 15% or so. But that is still some time coming. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, given the diversity of the Indian economy and the complexity, because you cannot, there is an argument which the Finance Minister keeps on saying, and there is some merit in that argument, that you cannot have agricultural commodities and say demerit goods or sin goods like cigarette, etc., to be taxed at the same rate. You cannot. So while saying that there will be a single standard rate doesn't mean that there is going to be only one uniform rate. Right. Probably the largest number of goods could be attracting the standard rate, and there are because of needs of political needs, social needs, as well as economic needs of goods that are consumed by the poorer class, needs to be taxed at a lower rate, and that is something that we cannot abandon.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Gaurav, for sharing all that insight with us. Well, for now, if you see, the current system of GST may be needing some bit of overhaul, but whether or not petroleum products can be brought under GST and what kind of new revenue neutral rate will be put on petroleum products is something which needs to a clear examination and a lot of debate by all the experts. And obviously, states will definitely not agree to a lower GST on petroleum products, and they will not be foregoing a lot of revenues that they earn on petroleum products as well. Thanks a lot for joining us in this edition of Editor's Take, and do stay logged on to moneycontrol.com for more news and updates. Thanks for watching.